Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. One of the most popular chart analysts in all of crypto is arguing that we are in the late phase of the bull market. And frankly, whether you look at the Bitcoin chart, you look at the XRP price chart, tons of various metrics that are relevant, you're gonna find that, yeah, we actually are pretty damn close to the end of this thing. So nobody knows for sure when we're finally gonna have that last parabolic rally, but if history is to rhyme with itself, then yes, we are going to see it. And frankly, sooner than later. In fact, I'm going to share with you perspective from 9 different XRP chart analysts, and all of them believe that, frankly. So it's a question. Do we have to go back down first to sweep, to go one final sweep of liquidity? Are we going to see another massive sell-off? Is there going to be some sort of macro narrative that's going to cause some sort of short-term angst and, negative price action? I mean, stuff like that's always possible. But I'm telling you, like, wait till you see what I got in this video, because it's analyst after analyst after analyst acknowledging that we have been trading this year within an increasingly tightening range, and that XRP, as is always the case, when you get to the end, before you get to the apex of a symmetrical triangle, it's going to break. So, like, we really are in that moment where any day you could wake up and it's actually happening. And this is going to be the last hurrah for this cycle, and we're going to end up in a bear market. And that's fine. Like, there's plenty of opportunity in a bear market, but the most exciting, fun part is still ahead. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. As I record this video, it is 3:06 a.m. Central Time, so it's now Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. XRP is $2.16. Bitcoin's a little over $105,000. And take a look at this 7-day chart for XRP. As I'm sure pretty much all of you are aware, on Monday, 2 days ago, we started rocketing to the upside, but that was very short-lived and came back down. Here's 7-day chart for Bitcoin. Same story, actually. And a little bit later, I'm going to highlight perspective from an XRP chart analyst who absolutely called this. And so I always want to give credit where it's due. Now, ultimately, this isn't going to matter. The fact that we've went up yet again, only to fall right back down. This is just normal price action. We're in a range, but we're going to burst out of this thing sooner than later. Here's a post from chart analyst Crypto Michael. He says, everyone gets so emotional over 2% moves. When Bitcoin breaks the 8-year line at $112,000, your coins will pump 20% per day for weeks. This is just one consolidation in a range. Even with daily war FUD, Bitcoin is still holding the range. The inevitable breakout will be spectacular. Yeah, and so as I've been insisting, all the stuff, all the war news, Israel, Iran, as far as it pertains to the charts, does not matter. I understand that the market responds to stuff like that, but it's always short-lived and frankly just creates opportunities. Here's a post from chart analyst Willy Woo, one of the most popular, well-known analysts in all crypto with 1.2 million followers on X. And he's putting out the warning that we're getting to the end of this whole thing. And we sure as hell are. So he wrote here, for macro cycle investors here, our risk model, which measures drops, Bitcoin liquidity is hinting Bitcoin has entered its late phase of its bull market. Still upside to go. We expect a Bitcoin bear market once global macro markets turn. So we are getting to that end point, and that's perfectly fine. As long as we get our opportunity for a life-changing wealth with XRP, that's perfectly fine, and then we can do it all over again and buy in the bear market when everything's on sale again. And then another several years or so later, we're going to get to experience another market run inevitably. And chart analyst Tech Dev, he knows that we're getting to the end of this thing too, and he shared this post with his 531,000 followers on X. He simply wrote, it's that time the market thinks comes every 4 years. This one took 5. And so we've always talked about how the cyclical nature of Bitcoin and crypto is a 4-year structure, but it's not like it's down to the minute. And he's been arguing for some time, and he's not the only one, that it's actually slowly lengthening, and so we're actually taking a little bit longer to get to the final blast-off phase. And maybe the analysts that are arguing that are correct. We'll see when this thing finally goes. But either way, the more important point is that we're living in that moment day to day where it makes sense for that blast off, and it is going to come. And this will signal the end of this bull market if history is to rhyme with itself. And so you can see he's got the price of Bitcoin up top, and then he's got the liquidity weighted business cycle. And every time we've gotten into this zone and started a reversal, that was the move. That's the beginning of the move where Bitcoin started ripping to the upside for its final run. And then you had alt season. There's no reason to think that this is going to be any different. Here's a post from chart analyst Mustache, and he wrote, have you noticed that total market cap replicates the structure of previous cycles in a similar way? Macro, there is no reason why we shouldn't be bullish. Obviously, that is correct. And you know what else is interesting, since we were talking about potentially this, it's taking a little bit longer structure-wise to get to this point where we have the final blast off here. I know that's not the point that he wrote here, but if you're just looking at this whole cycle versus the last one, you can just see, like, it has taken slightly longer. And so whether it speeds back up and wraps up at the same time, like we'll see. But I can understand the arguments when people are making them. But it doesn't change anything. Even if it took a little bit longer for any reasons, especially if it had to do with global liquidity, so on and so forth, fine. Even if that's the case, fine. We're still going to have the final blow off top. There's no reason that wouldn't happen. People always get super greedy, want to take their profits from Bitcoin, rotate those profits into other coins and see them take off, and you get massive volume for various coins as a result. There's no logical reason to think that humans are just going to stop behaving like that now because of reasons. No, they're going to do it. And so those profits will be taken again from Bitcoin, and they'll roll into pretty much everything else under the sun, including XRP. And it's so impressive that XRP ran to its all-time high this year of $3.40 without being at that point yet. Bitcoin dominance is still very high, actually. It's just separately XRP was running. So wait until that money does rotate in. It's going to be wild. And here's a post from chart analyst XR Punky. He says, XRP on the weekly chart. We are at the apex of this massive triangle. Something gotta give soon. The breakout will be epic. If you are still doubting a double-digit XRP, something is seriously wrong with you. Okay, I can appreciate the optimism and confidence there. Yeah, I don't make price predictions. I don't pretend to know for sure what's going to happen, but the idea of XRP getting into double-digit price action this cycle, not remotely crazy. In fact, just about every analyst that I follow thinks there's either they feel that it's about 100% chance or it's going to get at least close to that. And so this isn't actually a divisive topic even for chart analysts. It's just understood amongst this group that, yeah, that's almost certainly what's going to happen here. But look, one of the points I wanted to hammer home in this video is just take a look at the symmetrical triangle. And I'm going to show you more examples, but analysts are pointing, look, you're trading within a tightening range after we hit the all-time high earlier this year. It's been almost half a year at this point. And this thing, it's going to break out before it gets to the apex. That would be the expectation anyway. That's typically what happens. And the question is it going to be a breakout to the upside or the downside? Well, given that we're in a bull market, my bet is the upside. Even if in the short term you can have a little bit lower price action. I mean, there are still analysts warning that XRP could drop down to $1.90 to $2 in the short term. That would not invalidate this concept, though. I came across this headline from the Crypto Basic. Wealth Group founder expects XRP maxis to win big. Here's why. Okay, and I have a little bit of beef with this term because they almost don't exist. I think there might be one XRP maximalist on the planet, right? There are so many Bitcoin maximalists because, it's kind of a cult for a lot of those people. But the truth is that people in our community, we're much more level-headed. We see XRP not as a religion, but as an investment opportunity. And so we don't marry ourselves to it. We just think that it makes sense. And it's that's some of the strongest fundamentals in the entire crypto space. It's functionally useful. But you really don't come across XRP maximalists in daily life. Like, you just don't. So I'll take beef with that because there aren't a bunch of XRP maximalists. They're just aren't. But they're referencing here somebody who I happen to not be familiar with. Not that necessarily matters. But there's a guy named John who founded a firm called Wealth Group. He seems to be rather popular. He's got like over 800,000 followers on X. 800,000, maybe it's like 835,000. And he was theorizing that perhaps, when there's a Ripple IPO, that might be something that can kick off the price action for XRP. I don't really buy into that stuff. Yes, it's true. If you're in a hot market, it can be anything, any news would break, and then people use it as an excuse to cause XRP to start running. So I don't as much buy into that. But what I do find interesting, and I do know is a real thing, is this talk about the XRP symmetrical triangle. So here's another analyst highlighting this as well. So take a look at this. Piece reads as follows. Interestingly, he shared a chart showing how XRP has been trading in a symmetrical triangle since its drop from the $3.40 high in January 2025. For 5 months now, the token has moved within that triangle, staying mostly around the $2 mark. Data from the chart shows that XRP already attempted a breakout in March after Donald Trump announced plans to include XRP as a US government crypto stockpile. XRP briefly spiked to $3, but quickly dropped back into its usual range. Now that XRP is nearing the tip of the triangle, John and other analysts believe a breakout could happen soon, with his projections hinting at an initial launch above the $3 price region. And so I just really want to drive this point home. I am seeing broad acceptance that this is the moment we live in. XRP is going to burst. We're at the end of the symmetrical triangle just about, and it's going to go. I'm increasingly seeing this from analysts. And they may squabble over whether it means today, tomorrow, next week, next month, whatever it is. But we are, again, and this is the exciting part, we're living in that moment where it could just go at any. Like it really just could. Here's a post from chart analyst Zoom. He believes this as well. And he says, XRP Bollinger Bands tightening. Every time we've seen this happen, you know what happens next, winky face. Yes, indeed, we do. When the Bollinger Bands tighten, that in and of itself doesn't tell you if you're going to have a break to the upside or the downside, but like I argued leading up to the election in November, when XRP finally broke, I said, folks, we're in a bull market, so when it breaks, my bet is it breaks to the upside. Same argument I'm making right now. When it finally breaks, it's going to be to the upside. That's my bet. It doesn't make logical sense that it would just break down and that was that. And so again, he cited, yes, Bollinger Bands indeed tightening. Look what else he drew right here. A symmetrical triangle, and look at how we're getting to the apex of this thing. So this is why I see like these analysts that are saying there's a really good chance that XRP is going to pop, whether it's this month or July. I understand why they're arguing that. And nobody can consistently predict time, and I get that as well. But I'm just saying, look at the structure. It can't go on here forever. It just simply won't. Here's a post from chart analyst Steph is Crypto. XRP Bollinger Bands extremely tight. Massive move loading. So look, he's making the same point here. And so they're not quite as tight as they were in November. Not that they'd have to be. This would be enough, absolutely, to make XRP rocket in price. If we're right and this thing is indeed going to move up instead of down, which I sure as hell expect, if that's the case, this is going to be a much bigger move dollar-wise than what we saw in November of last year. Which would historically be the norm, by the way. Like after we saw that huge burst, I mean, Credible Crypto is making this argument. I think he's one of the best in the space, and he's been right about XRP thus far. And he says, well, here's historically what's normal after the first burst. Fantastic, love to see that dollar price action. But the next major impulse, that's the one that's way more impressive in terms of dollars. So again, tons of analysts recognizing the same or similar things. Here's a post from the blockchain backer, and this one was interesting. He seems to be comparing a chart structure from a coin called Verge. The ticker symbol for Verge is XVG. He seems to be comparing 2017 price action for Verge with where XRP is situated right now. And so here's what he wrote, and this is the Verge BTC chart on your screen right here. Back in 2017, you can see it was doing what it was doing here for quite some time. You can see over the 12-month period roughly leading up to it, and then it just went. That was alt season, of course, in 2017. And so here's what the blockchain backer said. He says, the funny thing about charting is that over the years, certain setups and charts always remain in the back of your brain. For me, that was XVG/BTC in 2017. It was a clean crash, retrace, reaccumulation, breakout. It had a peculiar ending. I'll never forget it. XRP BTC. So you can see what he's talking about right here. And there's this dotted trend line that was drawn. Now take a look at the XRP BTC chart. Same dotted line drawn right there, noting that we're brushing up against that specifically. So I suppose he's leaving us to assume what may happen next year, but that seems like quite a hint, doesn't it? Similar setup? Interesting. Well, and again, that would make sense too with what I've seen from pretty much every analyst over the sun. XRP could just go at any minute. And same for Bitcoin, the entire crypto asset class. This all happens in tandem, obviously. Here's a post from chart analyst Mikey Bull Crypto. He agrees as well. And here you can see he's got XRP in 2017. After the first major impulse, moved sideways about half a year, and then it went. And then he's got on the bottom here, XRP USD chart, showing where we are now. And we just got our first major impulse, in November. And he's noting it's looking pretty samey. This is like every analyst under the sun has noticed this. It is true. Like this is just the case. But that's why it makes sense to be exciting here. And so he says, XRP, I have seen this movie before. 2017 upcoming rally vibes. So this is a broadly accepted opinion from reputable chart analysts. It just makes sense. Dark Defender believes the same thing. You're seeing a recurring theme here? This is a post from Dark Defender, XRP USD chart. He says, XRP melting faces, phase 2. And so you can see what he's highlighting here. Look, 2017. Look at that sideways price action for about half a year. He's noting that's where we are right now, folks. We had our first major burst, moving sideways, then we go. Up to $18 for XRP. That's his expectation here. Up to $18.22. He's been talking about that level for a long time. Same thing that just happened in 2017. And we get to have fun watching that again. Here's a post from chart analyst Javon Marks. XRP is holding a clear breakout and can be getting ready for a major bullish continuations. Targets are $4.80 and $8. And to be clear, he doesn't think that's where it's going to peak this cycle. He's talking about in the relative short term, but he does believe it's ultimately going to go much higher than that. And so they all believe we're living in this moment where it makes sense that XRP would start going again. And it's true even from a historical perspective. Again, each of the last 2 market cycles, after XRP had its first impulse, it moved sideways for half a year, and then it went. So that would just line up. Here's a post from Crypto Insight UK, shared a clip from one of his videos. He said, no one on my timeline should be surprised by this XRP plus ETH price action. And so, of course, a couple days ago, again, Monday, XRP did start to move up with the rest of the market was too. Bitcoin was, like I said earlier in the video. And then we came back down a bit, back to where we were. But he published this video before that happened, and he specifically cited that there was liquidity above that would likely drag the price of XRP up there before going back down, and then ultimately, probably, going back to sweep the liquidity lows around $2, so $1.90 to $2. He does still think that's going to happen, just to be clear. And so I want to give credit where it's due, because what just happened on Monday, he called it. He said that's what's most probable, and that did happen. He's also still warning, though, that there's a good chance, though not guaranteed, that we will see XRP closer to $2 for that final sweep of the lows before seeing a continuation to the upside. But either way, like whether that happens or doesn't, and it doesn't absolutely have to, he'll tell you that too. We're in that moment. We're living in the moment where this thing, it's just gonna go. And it could at any moment. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.